It happened a month ago. I was doing my usual night shift at the hospital. I'm a 32-year-old nurse, and I've worked at this place for a couple of years. The night shifts are long and tiring. Most nights I'm running on empty, but I love taking care of my patients even when it's hard. One night I stepped into the break room. The lights flickered as I reached for the coffee pot. That's when I saw them. Children's drawings taped to the wall. They were all colorful, but mixed in were dark, shadowy figures. I thought it was some prank from the night staff. But then I saw one drawing that looked just like my patient, a little girl named Lily. It gave me chills. As the days went on, more drawings appeared. Each one was more disturbing than the last. I kept hearing whispers when I walked down the empty halls. I tried to dismiss it. I told myself I was just tired, but it felt like I wasn't alone sometimes, and it scared me. One night I had an elderly patient who kept mumbling about a child watching him. I felt my stomach turn as I tried to reassure him. "It's just your imagination," I said, but he looked terrified. His eyes were wide, and I couldn't shake the image of Lily from my mind. It was like she was everywhere. Then some staff members started to disappear. They left vague notes like, "I can't take it anymore." I felt uneasy walking the corridors. The air felt cold, like it was trying to pull the warmth from me. That night I found myself going back to the break room. I had to check those drawings again. They had multiplied. They looked more vivid, more real. It felt like the child's presence was growing stronger. I could almost hear laughter echoing down the hall. I was scared and tried to shake it off, but my heart raced. I glanced back at the drawings. I swear I saw one of them move. I turned to leave, and then I heard a faint voice whisper my name. I stopped dead. I felt a chill run down my spine. I didn't know what to think, but I felt paralyzed. I turned around and I saw it, a dark figure standing just outside the light. My breath caught in my throat. I didn't know if it was a child or something else. All I could do was stare at it. My heart was pounding and my hands felt cold. I asked, "Who's there?" But all I got was silence in return. The figure didn't move. It just stood there watching me. In that moment, everything around me felt wrong. I didn't know what to do. Finally, I blinked and it was gone. I felt a wave of panic wash over me as I ran out of the break room. I didn't look back. That night, I clocked out feeling sick. I can't stop thinking about it. The drawings, the whispers, that figure. I don't know what any of it means, but I can't shake the feeling that it isn't over. Something is still in that hospital waiting. The next night, I decided to take a different route to work. I thought maybe a change of scenery would help ease my mind. But as soon as I walked through the hospital doors, that familiar sense of dread washed over me. The fluorescent lights flickered, and the air felt heavy. I took a deep breath and tried to push it aside. My shift started smoothly, but the tension lingered. I couldn't shake the image of that figure from my thoughts. Every time I entered a room, I glanced around, half expecting to see shadows lurking. I focused on my patients, pouring myself into my work. But time dragged on, and I felt the unease creeping back. Around midnight, I felt compelled to go back to the break room. I figured I was just being silly, but something called me back to those drawings. When I walked in, my heart sank. More drawings had appeared, and the atmosphere felt charged. A few different staff members stood there, murmuring. I could see their faces were pale, filled with fear. "What's wrong?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. One of the nurses, Janet, looked at me with wide eyes. "You've seen them too, haven't you, the drawings?" I nodded slowly. The air chilled as I sensed that something shifted in the room. "Yes, and it feels different, like they're watching us." Janet shivered. "Exactly. Someone found the old patient files. They say a girl named Lily died in this hospital years ago. Her drawings were discovered in her room. They were all like these." A chill ran down my spine. This couldn't be real. But why are they here now? I don't know, but after the last few nights, people are talking about seeing her. Janet's voice trembled. If anyone stays late, they feel her presence. That's when my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out and my heart raced. An alert from the hospital system. "Emergency. Please report to room 205 ASAP. I glanced back at Janet, panic on my face. "That's the pediatric ward." The group exchanged worried looks. "We should stick together," another nurse suggested. As we made our way down the hall, whispers seemed to echo alongside us. I felt the temperature drop. Standing in front of room 205, I hesitated. My hand hovered over the doorknob. Just like before, I felt something watching us, something waiting. Then I heard it. A child's laughter. It was faint but clear, echoing from inside. The fear in my gut intensified, and before I could find the courage to turn the knob, the lights in the hallway flickered once more, plunging us into darkness. "That wasn't funny," someone whispered. But I could feel everyone's breath quicken. I wanted to run, but I couldn't move. Suddenly the door creaked open, revealing nothing but shadow inside. That's when I saw it again, a dark figure standing at the far corner of the room, just out of reach of the light. Before I could speak, the laughter grew louder, and the figure began to step forward. I realized then I was not just afraid for myself. The others were trembling beside me. And just like that, with a sudden rush, the lights flickered back on. The figure was gone. But I knew this wasn't over. I could feel it deep in my bones. My heart raced. Whatever it was waiting for me to make the next move. I stood frozen, staring into the empty room as the laughter faded. My heart pounded in my chest. The others were shifting uneasily beside me, looking just as confused and terrified as I felt. "What just happened?" one nurse whispered, breaking the silence. "I don't know," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. "But we need to check inside." With hesitation, I stepped toward the door. I could feel the nervous eyes of my coworkers on me, weighing their fears against my resolve. I gripped the doorknob, feeling its cold metal against my palm as I slowly pushed the door open. The room was small, the dim lights casting long shadows. The beds were empty, but the air felt thick with something unspeakable. My gaze darted to the far corner, the same spot where I had seen the figure. It was just a wall now, but there was a sense of foreboding that clung to the air. "What was that all about?" Janet asked, her eyes wide as she leaned in closer. I started to say, but stopped. Something on the wall caught my eye, drawings, more of them. Scribbles in crayon that looked as if they belonged to the hands of a child. They were pinned up in a haphazard manner. My heart dropped as I read the words scrawled in jagged letters beneath the drawings. "Help me. They won't let me go," and "Find my friend." "See?" Janet gestured toward them, her voice shaking. "This is what I was talking about. Is this what's been happening?" "Lily?" I murmured, remembering the name from earlier. My mind raced with questions. Was this girl trying to communicate? What friend was she talking about? The flickering lights above us cast erratic shadows, and I felt the urge to back away. But curiosity held me in place. I took a step closer, my eyes scanning each drawing. They depicted a girl with bright eyes, sitting with other children who looked forlorn. In each one, there was a shadowy figure lurking behind them. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the hallway. My heart jumped, and we all turned toward the sound. "Please," another nurse whispered, clutching her chest. "I can't do this." "Stay together," I urged, though I could feel my own resolve weakening. "We need to see what that was." As we stepped back into the hallway, the lights flickered again, but this time they went out completely, plunging us into darkness. Panic surged through me. "We need to move now," I said, my voice sharper. I could hear breaths quickening, and the creaking of the building around us seemed to resonate with our fear. We fumbled our way through the dark, one hand touching the wall for guidance. Then, from behind me, I heard it again, the soft laughter of a child. It cut through the silence, chilling me to the bone. "Did you hear that?" I asked, my voice trembling. There was no response. With my heart racing, I turned to see who else had heard it, but everyone was frozen. A mixture of terror and disbelief painted across their faces. We could only stand still, listening as the laughter grew softer, fading into the oppressive darkness. "Let's get to the main desk. We need backup," I finally plucked the courage to say. I began to move, leading the way. Each step felt heavier than the last, as if something was trying to hold us back. That's when I noticed something glinting on the floor ahead of us. I crouched down, my heart racing again. It was a crumpled piece of paper. I reached to pick it up, and dread washed over me as I realized it was another drawing, one that looked entirely different from the others. It showed a tall, looming figure standing beside the same girl who had appeared in the other illustrations, her eyes wide with horror. I dropped the paper, my pulse pounding in my ears. Something was deeply, unexplainably wrong, and I knew we were not just in a hospital anymore. As I turned to tell the nurses what I had found, I caught sight of something at the end of the hallway. A dark shadow loomed, slowly moving toward us, and my breath caught in my throat. "Run!" I screamed, feeling the icy breath of fear on my skin as we dashed away, uncertain of what lay behind us but certain that Lily's story was far from over. We stumbled into the next corridor, adrenaline pumping through our veins. I could hear the rapid footsteps of my co-workers behind me, matching the frantic rhythm of my own heart. I felt the distant echo of that laughter lingering in the air, taunting us as we ran. "Which way?" someone shouted. I didn't even know myself. "Just keep moving," I yelled back, trying to sound confident though my mind was racing. The hallway was a maze of flickering lights, and shadows danced around us like phantoms. I focused on the exit signs above, praying they would lead us to safety. Each step echoed, amplifying the dread that clung to us. "What about the main desk?" Janet gasped, clearly struggling to keep pace. "We'll get there," I replied, though I felt a gnawing doubt. What if this was all a trap? What if we were being led deeper into whatever horror awaited us? As we rounded a corner, a sudden crash shook the walls. It sounded closer this time. I glanced back and I saw the shadow moving faster now, closer to us. My stomach dropped. "There's something behind us," I shouted. Everyone gasped, and I felt their fear magnify mine. We turned another corner, desperately searching for a way out. The hallway seemed to stretch endlessly, and I could hear whispers now, soft voices echoing in an unintelligible chant, swirling around us like smoke. "It's not real," I told myself, but the weight of the words stung. We stumbled to a stop in front of a door marked "Staff Only." My hands shook as I reached for the knob. I flung it open and we piled inside, slamming the door shut behind us. Breathe, I thought. I needed to breathe. We were safe for the moment. The small room was filled with medical supplies and abandoned charts. A single flickering overhead light cast shadows that danced on the walls, but it felt suffocating, claustrophobic. "What do we do now?" someone whimpered, pressing against the door as if it could shield us from whatever was out there. "Find a phone," I said, scanning the room. "We need to call security." As the others rummaged through drawers, I stepped toward the corner. There was a large whiteboard covered in notes and doodles. I approached, and my breath caught again. Underneath the cryptic scrawls was a familiar drawing. A child, the same girl from the crayon drawings, but this time, the looming figure next to her was clearer, more defined. My heart raced. It was the same tall shape, but now I could make out features. A face, twisted and grinning. I stepped back, horror washing over me. "Look at this," I called to the others. They gathered around, fear etched on their faces as they registered what I had found. "Why is her picture everywhere?" Janet asked, her voice trembling. "I don't know," I stammered, feeling the pressure of the unknown close in. "But we need to find her." Just then a loud bang echoed from the door we had just shut. We froze, our eyes wide. Whatever was out there was trying to get in. "We can't stay here," I urged, panic rising. "We need to find her or—" Suddenly the lights flickered again, dimming until they were nearly out. I felt the temperature drop, a coldness creeping into the air. "That isn't just a drawing anymore," I whispered, realization hitting me hard. Then everything went dark, and the whispers rose, louder now, filling the silence with a haunting melody. They called to me like a siren song, pulling me to the unknown. "Lily," I breathed, feeling the electric charge of fear crackle around us. The whispers stopped. In the silence, a single voice whispered back, "Help me." My heart raced. Was it her? Before I could react, the door burst open, and the shape emerged, filled with unnatural speed and a darkness that seemed to swallow everything whole. And just like that, we were out of time. Out. The darkness enveloped us thick and suffocating. I barely had time to process the shape before it was on us. Fear ricocheted through my veins, urging my legs to move, but my feet felt rooted to the floor. "Run!" someone screamed, jolting me into action. We barreled past the looming figure, adrenaline propelling us forward. I didn't dare look back, not when every instinct was screaming to escape. We pushed through the door on the opposite side of the room, bursting into a dimly lit break room. The smell of stale coffee hung in the air. I slammed the door shut, locking it behind us, not that it felt any safer here. "What now?" Janet gasped, panting heavily against the counter. "Find a way out," I said, my mind racing. The windows were barred, and the only exit was the door we had just come through. I felt the walls closing in again, that coldness creeping back. "Guys!" another co-worker, Mark, shouted from the corner. My eyes darted to him as he pointed to a narrow hallway leading to the storage area. "We can check over there." We followed him, our breaths coming in ragged gasps. As we rounded the corner, I spotted something on the floor. A colorful drawing, crumpled and neglected. I picked it up, and the breath caught in my throat. It was the same child again, and beside her stood the shadowy figure, now with glowing red eyes. "What is this?" I muttered, my voice trembling. "More of that girl?" Mark asked, peering closer. "What does she want?" "I don't know," I replied, swallowed by confusion. "But it can't be good." Just then a loud thud reverberated down the hall. My heart raced. I glanced back, half expecting to see that same figure bearing down on us. But nothing appeared. Just the oppressive silence, broken only by our rapid breathing. "Maybe we should go back," Janet suggested, her voice shaky. "No," I said firmly, despite the fear coiling in my stomach. "If we go back, we're trapped. We need to keep moving." We pressed on into the storage room. Boxes were strewn about, some toppled over, debris littering the floor. My pulse quickened as I scanned the room. There had to be something here, a way to signal for help or even a window. "Look," Mark called from the back, gesturing to an old intercom system perched on a dusty shelf. "We can use this." I rushed over, my hands fumbling as I tried to figure it out. It was old and covered in grime, but I could see the power switch. I flipped it on, and static crackled to life. "Hello?" I shouted into the receiver, the sound echoing back to us. "We need help, we're trapped." Nothing but silence answered. A chill settled in my bones as I turned to my team, only to see their faces pale. "What's wrong?" "They're gone," Janet whispered, trembling. I whipped around and a cold dread washed over me. One of my co-workers had vanished. "Where's Mark?" I asked, desperation creeping into my voice. From the dark corner behind a shelf I heard it, a soft giggle, echoing through the air. "Help me!" It was a child's voice, that familiar voice. "Lily!" I gasped, and without thinking I stepped forward, driven by something I couldn't understand. But before I could reach her, a cold hand clasped my arm, tightening around it like a vice. I turned to scream, but the terror stopped me. I was not alone. The grip on my arm tightened further, sending a shock of icy fear coursing through me. I whipped around to confront whoever held me, my heart hammering against my ribs. He stood there, right behind me, his face obscured by nothing but shadows. I couldn't make out any features, just that glint of red eyes piercing through the darkness, locking onto mine. His presence was suffocating, and I couldn't breathe. "Let go of me," I shouted, my voice breaking. The pressure released, but I stumbled back, bracing myself against a metal shelf. I glanced to where the giggle had come from, praying it was just my imagination. But Lily was there, just out of reach, her small frame illuminated by a flicker of light. "Lily, come here," I urged, my voice wavering. But instead of moving towards me, she cocked her head, a sad smile spreading across her face, as if she understood something I didn't. The figure that had held me released a low growl, something guttural and raw, and I jumped. "We need to go, now." Janet's voice snapped me back to the moment. She was dragging Mark's empty jacket, a frantic look etched on her face. We can't leave him, I protested, but doubt swirled in my mind. What if Mark was gone for good? What if the next time I turned around, even Janet would disappear? Please, she pleaded. We need to get out of here. The shadows moved, and the chilling giggle echoed again. I nodded, not knowing what else to do. But as we turned to run, the intercom buzzed back to life, crackling with static once more. Help me, the familiar child's voice whispered from the speaker, almost hypnotic. Lily? No, Janet yelled, pulling me away. We're running, not helping. We dashed toward the break room, the door swinging wide open as we rushed inside. I resisted the urge to look back, fear mounting as the darkness seemed to vibrate with our frantic footsteps. Janet slammed the door shut behind us, and I pressed my back against the door, trying to catch my breath. What was that? I gasped, feeling my pulse thrum in my ears. I don't know, she replied, her voice shaking. But we have to call for help. I can't find my phone. Suddenly, flashes of light flickered through the window, streaming across the walls like an eerie spotlight. I turned towards them, hoping for salvation, but there was nothing but the thin barrier of the barred window. Do you see that? I asked, squinting. It's like... A loud crash echoed through the break room. Our heads snapped back towards the door. The figure stood there, more defined now, those red eyes piercing through the murky uncertainty. Run! I shouted again, lunging towards the only other door in the room. But it was too late. The figure stepped into the light, and it was worse than I could have imagined. It wasn't just a monster. It bore a cruel resemblance to someone I knew. My knees buckled and everything went dark. I felt arms around me, pulling me into the abyss, and in that moment the laughter of a child rang out, mocking and echoing as I disappeared into the shadows. I came to in the sterile break room, my back pressed against the floor. The overhead light flickered, throwing shadows that danced like specters on the walls. I gasped, the cold air crisp in my lungs. Where was Janet? Where was Mark? I shot upright, scanning the room. Empty. The door was still shut, but my pulse quickened, imagining who or what could be on the other side. I pushed myself to my feet, steadying against the counter. My body trembled, and nausea twisted in my gut. Janet? I called out, my voice trembling, no response. Panic clawed at me. The room felt smaller, the walls closing in, and I could still hear that laughter threading through my mind. I stumbled toward the door and pressed my ear against it, straining to pick up any sound. Nothing. It was unnervingly quiet. I rummaged through my pockets, hoping for my phone, but it was gone. Then I remembered Janet had mentioned hers was missing too. That thought sent a chill down my spine. What if we were cut off from the outside world? A soft thud caught my attention. My heart leapt and I swung around, nearly blind to the figure that stepped into the room from the darkness behind me. Lily's smile was wide, too wide, and she hovered just beyond the reach of the light. They're not coming back, you know, she said, her voice unnaturally sweet. I blinked, trying to decipher if this was a cruel trick my mind was playing. Lily, what are you doing here? We need to get out. She giggled, a sound so innocent yet tinged with something dark. But they don't want you to leave, they want to play. Stop it, I shouted, stepping forward. Where are Jan and Mark? They'll help you. They can't help you. They're with the others. A creeping dread grew as I processed her words. The laughter echoed back, louder this time, the shadows lengthening around me. I wanted to deny it, to tell myself this was all in my head, but something told me it was too late. Lily, please, I pleaded again, but she just pointed a finger, directing my gaze to the wall behind her. That's when I saw it. A series of drawings, scrawled in dark crayon, depicting scenes I couldn't comprehend. Each picture was filled with blurs, faceless figures, but one stood out. A grotesque, distorted version of myself, surrounded by shadows. I backed away, fear clawing up my throat. What is this? Those are the ones who play with you, Lily chirped, her voice moving to a sing-song tone. See? You're already part of their game. Terror surged through me as reality twisted. I had no idea how long I'd been trapped in this place, or what would come next. I needed to find Janet, but the shadows seemed to ripple closer, whispering secrets I could not understand. "No!" I screamed, trying to shatter the failing perception of my sanity. But the room felt like it was closing in, and Lily stared at me, her eyes swirling with darkness. In that moment, everything went quiet again, leaving just her smile lingering in the air. The next heartbeat felt suspended as I realized I was not alone in the dark after all. Then the door behind me creaked open. I turned, heart pounding, to face whatever horror awaited on the other side. I froze, my breath catching as the door opened slowly, the hinges squeaking like a warning. A figure stood in the doorway, backlit by the flickering hallway lights. I squinted against the glare, heart racing as the shadow shifted. "Help!" I called, my voice cracking in desperation. I hoped for a familiar face, someone who could anchor me to reality. Instead, a man stepped forward, tall with dark hair, but his expression was unreadable. "Who are you?" I demanded, inching back toward Lily, still standing in that unsettling wide smile. "I work here," he said, his voice flat and monotone. "I'm supposed to be on break. What happened here?" I felt the urge to explain, to spill everything, but the shadows around me whispered again, making my words stick in my throat. I think we're trapped." He looked like he didn't understand as he stepped fully into the room, the light illuminating his features. His face seemed too calm, too controlled, but I was desperate for clarity. "Did you see my friends?" "Your friends?" he repeated, still unmoving. "Yes, Janet and Mark, they were—" Suddenly, Lily let out a giggle, a sound that echoed in the silent room. My heart sank. "You shouldn't have called them," she said, her smile fading into something darker. "What do you mean?" I shot back, panic rising again. The man's expression didn't change as he took another step closer, and I instinctively backed away. "The others are waiting," Lily sang, twirling on her toes like a child. She stretched her arms wide. "For the game to start." The air thickened with a sense of foreboding. "What game?" I asked, more to myself than to her. The man's eyes flickered toward her, his calm demeanor unshaken. "The game doesn't always end well," he said. His voice dropped to a whisper. "You'll wish you had left when you had the chance." At those words, ice surged through me. "You know what's happening here?" I felt a swell of anger. The fear crept up again, tightening around my throat as I realized he was withholding something crucial. He didn't move, just stared at Lily. "They like the way you squirm. They've already picked who plays next." I couldn't process it. "What does that mean?" Before he could answer, the lights flickered again, plunging the room into a moment of darkness. I barely had time to react before a low, echoing laugh rang out through the walls, the sound alive and twisting as it filled the space. "Run," he urged, eyes wide now. "Don't let them take you." But my feet felt glued to the floor, fear rooting me in place. Then his shoulder brushed against mine as he rushed toward the door. "Wait!" I shouted, but he was gone. Just like that, swallowed by the shadows, and suddenly I was alone again. The laughter echoed off the walls, filling the empty room with its ominous presence. I turned, ready to sprint for the door, but I froze again. Lily stepped closer, a sing-song tune laced in her voice. "It's time to play, isn't it?" That was when I noticed the drawings on the wall were shifting, moving like they were alive. The grotesque figures began to crawl from the paper, seeping into the room. I stumbled back, the heartbeat of fear pounding in my ears. I had to find Janet, before it was too late. The moment I backed away from Lily, my head spun. The dark figures creeping from the drawings were grotesque, elongated limbs and hollow eyes staring directly at me. I darted left, searching for a way out, my mind racing. I couldn't let them get to me. "Janet!" I yelled, voice choked with panic. "Mark!" But the only answer was the faint echo of my own voice, swallowed by the swirling shadows. Lily's laughter rang through the room, a sound that curled like smoke in the still air. "You're playing by their rules now. Isn't this exciting?" The walls seemed to pulse, and I could feel their presence closing in, whispering promises I couldn't understand. I wanted to scream, but I had to stay focused. Running was my only option. My gaze landed on a window at the far side, faint light spilling through the cracks between the grimed glass. I bolted toward it, determination pushing me forward. "Don't ignore me," Lily called after me, her voice a melodic taunt. "You want to play hide and seek? I'm really good at this." I could hear the shadows shifting behind me, the grotesque figures inching closer as I reached the window. A rush of adrenaline shot through me, and I pressed my palms against the cold glass. It felt impossible to pry open. "Come back," Lily shouted, the playful tone masking something much darker. "Leave me alone," I screamed back, fear bubbling inside. I pushed harder, the window creaking under pressure, but it didn't budge. I couldn't be trapped here with whatever was lurking in the dark. Not anymore. Just then, the sound of a door creaked open behind me. I whipped around, thinking it might be the man who had just vanished, but it was nothing. Only silence, thick and heavy, wrapping around me like fog. Then I noticed something on the floor, a small piece of paper, crumpled and stained. I bent down, heart racing, and recognized it as the same kind of paper used for hospital notes. I unfolded it quickly, trembling fingers working to get it smooth. The words were shaky but clear. "They're waiting. Don't play their game." A chill coursed down my spine. Who wrote this? Were they another victim? I felt the shadows draw closer, and I knew I didn't have much time. I scrunched the note back up and stuffed it in my pocket. Time to move. I had to find another way out. I could feel the darkness closing in, a smothering presence just behind me. The laughter faded, replaced by a whispering chorus that seemed to fill the room. I ran, desperation fueling each step. I had to find Janet and Mark, had to get everyone out of here before the game could start. As I raced through the dimly lit corridor, I spotted a flickering light at the end. I sprinted toward it, my only hope. But just as I reached the door, it slammed shut with a deafening bang. My heart stopped. It felt like the walls were closing in, and I was no longer alone. I turned slowly, and that's when I saw it. A figure standing in the shadows, watching me, and it was smiling. I felt my breath hitch as the figure stepped into the light, revealing not just any shadow, but a familiar visage. It was the man from before, the one who had warned me. But his face was twisted now, a ghastly blend of calm and malevolence, and I instinctively took a step back. "Let me out!" I shouted, voice trembling. But instead of replying, he just smiled wider, as if the fear coursing through me was nothing more than a game. "Are you ready to play?" he said, the words sliding off his tongue like honey tainted with poison. "No!" I snapped, shaking my head, the adrenaline surging through my veins. With each breath, I could feel the laughter rising around me, pulling me closer to the shadows. My mind raced. This was all connected. Lily, the drawings, the warnings, everything was part of this twisted game. "Lily?" I blurted out. "Where is she? Where are my friends?" The man gestured behind him and my heart dropped. It was an open doorway leading to pitch-black darkness. "They're waiting for you. Everyone plays their part eventually." I froze. Whatever waited beyond that threshold, I couldn't let it take me. "No more games!" I shouted defiantly, my voice breaking as I turned on my heel, desperate for another exit. My eyes darted around, searching for an escape. Behind me, the laughter echoed, filling the air with an intoxicating mix of fear and anticipation. "You can't run from this," he called, his voice smooth and cold. "You're already part of the story." Didn't look back. I bolted down the hallway, the shadows writhing like hungry serpents. There had to be a way out. I couldn't be trapped here forever, not with whatever horrors lurked in these walls. As I rounded the next corner, the flickering lights cast doubt in my mind, the chase feeling like a dream I couldn't escape. And then I saw it, a small window at the end of the corridor casting a sliver of light. My heart pounded louder, urgency gripping me tightly. I rushed forward, praying it would be unlocked. "Help me!" someone whispered just behind me. I glanced back in horror, realizing it was Lily's voice. "I need you." "No, you're not real," I screamed. I reached the window, fingers gripping the ledge as I pushed with all my might. The weight of the building trembled around me, shadows spilling forward, and the whispers grew louder, mingling with Lily's laughter. But the window wouldn't budge. I slammed my fists against it in frustration, desperation clawing at my resolve. I could feel the darkness closing in, each heartbeat echoing in my ears like a funeral dirge. "Join us," the man's voice called out, thick with glee. "It'll be fun." "No," I shouted, voice hoarse with panic and anger. I couldn't give in. Then I remembered the crumpled note deep in my pocket, the warning. I pulled it out, frenzy tightening my grip. "I'm not afraid of you," I yelled, thrusting the note into the air as if it could shield me from the looming darkness around me. Suddenly, I could hear the whispers shifting, becoming erratic, the shadows pulling back. It was like my words created a space, a moment of clarity amid the chaos. I dashed back towards the door that had slammed behind me, lungs burning with each step. The laughter morphed into cries, the figures retreating as my voice wove a barrier between their shadows and my escaping hope. Feeling a rush of defiance, I flung open the door and stepped back into the breakroom again. Desperation pushed me forward as I turned my back on the eerie echo. But the door slammed shut behind me with a thunderous bang, vibrating through the floor beneath my feet. Panic surged, but I focused on the other door, the only way out. I whipped it open, light flooding the corridor as I stumbled through, heart pounding wildly. Instincts kicked in. I ran. The whispers faded into a chorus of distant screams, the pressure around me lifting as I sprinted toward the stairs. I could feel the building's pulse, a remnant of misplaced life as I jaggedly surged up the steps 2 at a time. I dashed to the roof door, the air feeling fresher as I burst through to the night sky. The city lay sprawled below me, calm and oblivious. Had I made it? Had I escaped? I stood there, gasping for breath, feeling the rush of adrenaline slowly ebb away. My heart ached for Janet and Mark, hoping against hope that they were safe. I glanced back at the door, feeling uncertainty loom behind me. The hospital where I had cared for so many had become a maze of nightmares, and as I stepped closer to the edge, I couldn't help but wonder if they were still waiting for me. But deep down, I knew something was still playing out. Lily, the shapes, the laughter echoed in my mind. As I took a step back from the edge, I thought about how it was far from over. I might have escaped physically, but I wasn't sure I'd ever leave the memories behind. And sometimes I still hear the laughter, a reminder of the shadows lurking just beyond the veil of my reality.